Hey guys, how's it going? It's Jay from Sony Alpha Lab, and what I got for you today is the new Sony PZ, which means Power Zoom 16 to 35 millimeter f4G lens. Now, this is a ultra wide angle, full frame coverage lens. It goes for about $1,200 US, and it has that Power Zoom feature. Now, if you're not familiar with what Power Zoom is, basically it has like a lever on here, and it'll control the zoom for you. Now what's so cool about the Power Zoom feature is, first of all, it's variable, so you can go super slow or you can speed it up and zoom in really fast if you want. But it's so smooth and stable, it looks super cinematic. It's awesome how it works, and I'm going to show you some of the sample footage I got. So it feels like you're using a camcorder or something, the way that that zoom is so smooth. So, all right guys, let's just get right into it, and I'm gonna show you what this beast can do in the real world and the lab. Alrighty, so here she is in hand. And here you can see the front of the lens. Now, it's got a 72 millimeter filter thread, and it has a nice pedal style lens hood. You can take that off, throw that back on. And looking at it from the side, this thing is just really feature rich. It has an iris lock here for the aperture ring. It's got the click on and click off for the aperture ring as well. It has an autofocus, manual focus switch. It has the custom button here, and here is the variable zoom lever. Now you can just zoom this super slow, or you can pull it all the way up and zoom it fast. You can also use the zoom ring to zoom the lens if you prefer, and then it also has a focus ring. The focus ring feels really smooth, very, very buttery, and the zoom ring feels a little bit tighter than the focus ring, but equally as smooth and buttery. It's just a little bit harder to turn. It takes a little bit more effort, but it's just as smooth as the focus ring. Now this is a weather sealed lens also, and it has the little rubber gasket here on the back. Got a nice G badge there. So a few features about this lens that stand out. The zoom is all internal, so the lens does not change size when you zoom. In addition to that, it has what's called smooth motion optics, so it has suppressed focus breathing. All right, so this is just a focus breathing test. So now look for the zoom, like the little bit of zoom that happens when I select the background. Now it has dual XD linear autofocus motors, so it's extremely fast and quiet. The lens also has 13 elements in 12 groups. It has all sorts of high quality glass in there. It's got a super ED, regular ED, spherical elements. The aperture range goes from f4 to f22, and it also has the fluorine lens coating on the front there. Has a 7-blade aperture mechanism inside there. It's kind of small, so it's really hard to see, but it'll give you nice rounded bokeh balls, as you'll see in the lab testing photos. Now, minimum focus distance, you're looking at 9.4 inches or 24 centimeters. The lens does not have any image stabilization, but it's very small and very lightweight. It only weighs in at 12.5 ounces or 353 grams, and that is very light for a full frame lens. So when you strap this to a camera like the a7S III or the a7C, for example, it complements it so nice, especially the a7C because it's smaller. Some of the cameras do have that zoom rocker on the camera itself, like the Sony ZV-E10, the Sony FX3, for example. They have zoom levers on the camera itself. So another cool thing, guys, is you could use the Imaging Edge mobile app to control this, and so this way you don't have to touch the camera if you don't have a zoom lever on your camera. So touch to tracking works, as you can see, and then you can just use the little buttons on the app itself to do your zooming. Now, I just changed the speed in post there when I sped it up. Here's just a quick tracking test, and you can see the bokeh balls change as it tracks the quarter. All right, so here we are in Lightroom, and I just did some lab testing because I wanted to show you, in particular, the distortion on this lens because it's pretty severe. So here's what it looks like straight off the camera when shooting raw quality at 16 millimeter. Now, here's one where I just corrected it a little bit. As you can see here over on the right, I had to drag the distortion over to plus 50, and then I also selected constrain crop, and that's basically what we got right now because there is no profile correction for this lens yet. Now, it does say that there's a built-in lens profile applied right here, But if you click on that, all that is a chromatic aberration fix profile. It's not a distortion profile, just so you know if you see this right here. So anyways, that's what you're looking at. So like I said, it is pretty darn severe. Now, when recording video, as you saw, it does correct pretty good while recording, so it's not that bad. Same thing when shooting JPEG, it pretty much fixes it for the most part. So just wanted to zoom in here to show you just how sharp this is. So you can see I focused on the dollar bill, and this is at f4, and this lens, as expected, is razor blade sharp. All the way in the corner, really sharp as well. Depth of field is a little bit of a factor there, but you could see here on the circuit board, it's very, very sharp, and the out of focus area is looking pretty good as well. So that's what we're looking at 16 millimeter. Now again, here's the distortion. You can see it stretched that can out quite a bit. It does get stretched a decent amount. Not too bad, but it's like fatter at the top, you know? So you can really only do so much distortion correction depending on what's in your scene. So keep that in mind, you know? Like human faces and stuff. If there's a human face in the corner, it's going to distort pretty bad. Now here's about 20 millimeter, just to show you the range. And again, razor blade sharpness here. Really tack sharp. Super impressed with that. Also, color and clarity looks great. Raw, straight off the camera. Got excellent contrast. Now here's 24 millimeter. And here's 35 millimeter. Now again, I'll just zoom in at 35 millimeter, f4, so you can see, again, just how sharp this is, corner to corner. Let's go on to the minimum focus. I was very close to the minimum focus here during this test, and I just wanted to show you a aperture run here. So this is f4, this is f5.6, this is f8, and again, look at these bokeh balls. At f8, they're near perfectly round. This one is looking excellent. These lights are like little LED lights, so they don't render quite as nice, but this one's an actual light bulb, and it renders much more realistically to what light bulbs would look like. Here's f11. Here's f16. So let me just go back to this image here. So this is f4, pretty much minimum focus distance, and you can see, again, the sharpness on the corner is really good. Very happy with that result. And then of course, as you stop it down, it is going to tack up a little bit. I just did aperture runs at the various focal lengths, but it's so sharp at f4 that I don't really think I need to show you all the aperture runs, to be honest. But check this out. This is 35 millimeter, and you can see 35 millimeter, the distortion is actually not that bad. It's definitely more towards the 16 and 20 millimeter area. So here's 24 millimeter. You could see just a little bit of distortion. It's not that bad though. And here's 20 millimeter. You can see the distortion is starting to get significantly worse. And then at 16 millimeter, it's, you know, the worst. You could really see the curvature and whatnot. But check out when I shot in JPEG mode. So when I switched the camera to JPEG, this is what it did. I was shooting at night though, as opposed to daytime. This was daytime. This was nighttime, so the background looks a little different. Sorry about that, but I just wanted to show you the distortion correction when shooting JPEG, and this is what you can expect Lightroom's profile to look like once they make a profile for this lens. It'll look pretty much just like this as far as the distortion goes, which is pretty good. Again, went to my favorite restaurant, Eddie's Roadhouse, and you could see the distortion here on this menu is pretty severe. But you know, again, you can manually fix it if you want by dragging this out just like so, and then do constrain crop, and that looks pretty good. So it's not that big of a deal, in my opinion. Here's just a picture of a beer glass here. You can see that background rendering looks awesome. And here's just some really cool artwork. Check this out. This is Darius, and look how sharp this is. Now, this is at ISO 800. f4 handheld 1/160th of a second, and you can just see incredible detail and sharpness, clarity. Look at this one. It's fantastic. Take a look at some food. This is what my brother got. I don't remember what it was called, but it was killer. I got a sausage, egg, and cheese, and it was really good. It wasn't the best thing I ever had at Eddie's, though. I gotta say, the sausage was a little too thick, I think. Like, the sausage patty was like it was like the size of a huge burger. It was too much sausage, but it was still very delicious. This, on the other hand, this potato on the side, as you just saw in that video footage, was out of this world killer. And here's Eddie himself. He's a really great dude. He always comes over and talks with us. We love hanging out with Eddie. He's awesome. Really cool place. There's one of my brother. Now here, I just took a bunch of landscape photos and I just wanted to show you a couple HDR photos because I love using wide angle lenses for HDR photography in particular. And I also like using wide angle lenses for landscapes. And as you can see here, this is straight off the camera raw file, shooting f8, 16mm. Here is the HDR. So I combined 3 separate exposures, and here are the other 2 exposures. So this is +2 brightness, this is -2 brightness, and this is a normal exposure. So I combined those 3 to get this. They have this nice little lookout here. You can check out the little spillway or whatever you want to call this little waterfall thing. And I was pretty happy with that. Here's a raw file. I tried to slow the shutter speed down. So this is at 1/15 of a second. A couple different exposures. This is at 1/8 of a second. And here is the HDR. So the HDR doesn't look that much different. You can just see in the water here, you get a little bit more detail. So here's a normal exposure of the Green Bridge down the road from my house, and here's the HDR. So you can see here, I find the HDR really brings this image to the next level. It looks so much better. A little bit oversaturated perhaps. Now this one is just a vertical. I wanted to show you this so you can see that distortion on the bridge. These boards are perfectly straight. So this almost looks like I'm using a slight fisheye effect. But again, you can fix that with some correction, distortion correction. And here's just an HDR version, just a quickie. I didn't do any other editing other than just merging it. But you can see there's some dust in the cloud there. I have dust on my sensor, A7C there. Here's just another landscape. Again, here's the HDR result, and I think this looks great. Very happy with this result. Super wide angle view. Here's another one, and here's the HDR version. All right, so here I am in front of the camera, and I'm recording right now with the 16 to 35mm lens, and it's at about 35mm. So if I just touch this toggle, you could see now I just panned out to 16mm. So I can go back right about there. Framing looks pretty good. And there you have it. Now, the depth of field play isn't quite as good as the other lenses I use. For example, I used a 20mm f1.8, and I also used a 35mm f1.8 for this headshot stuff that I'm doing right now. So this lens is a bit slower at f4. So that results in the background being a little bit sharper than I would ideally like. But, that's just, it is what it is. That's what makes this lens so much lighter weight, is that slower aperture, f4. So the glass doesn't need to be near as big. Now, of course, they make the GM version of this, which is an f2.8 lens, but it's not a power zoom, so you'd have to zoom that manually. But if you do want more depth of field play, you can definitely look at the 16 to 35 GM lens. That pretty much wraps up this review. So, like I said, I was really happy with the lens other than the distortion, but again, you can kind of correct for that, and the video footage is already corrected, so it's not that big a deal for video. But just my opinion on that. If you felt like this video was good and it helped you out, can you give me a thumbs up? I'd really appreciate that. And if you'd like to see more content like this, consider hitting that subscribe button. It'll let you know when I come out with new videos. All right, guys, I will catch up with you next time. Please have a great day and be safe out there, all right? Take care.